Regent Tuss has a son that will graduate in the next week. His son Dolan will graduate, and he has decided to attend the University of Montana. So I thought that this is an appropriate time to recognize that. Additionally, there were two University of Montana graduates in the Christian family. And so it's pretty exciting. So if we could just join in the celebration of those three. So with that, then, I will turn it over to you, Chancellor, for your remarks.
But first, we'll help the new Chancellor engage in Information Technology 101, how to turn on the microphone. Well, as I was saying, on behalf of all my colleagues here at Northern, we'd like to welcome each of you to our campus. You've arrived here at a particularly exciting time in the institution's history because there's a lot of things going on. And for those of you who have not been up this way and have not had the opportunity to come to Havre since the last board meeting, let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing. If I could have the first slide, please. Great. And the second slide. One of the things that we've been working on is a vision statement for the university. During my interview process, it was very clear to me that in all the comments I received, the university was trying to identify what its particular focus was going to be for the 21st century. So through a series of open forums, web comments, and various types of opportunities for individuals to engage on campus, the campus collaboratively developed this particular mission statement. And I bring this to your attention because we're very aware of the Board of Regents' direction regarding institutional differentiation. So the focus up here at Northern is going to be on developing unique academic programs that are responsive to local, regional, and state workforce needs. And that's particularly important for us given our history of service to the North Central region and our programs in technology, nursing, education, and other areas. What it's also going to be allowing us to focus on is being as nimble as possible. For example, our proximity to the Bakken area and the kind of involvement we're having under Dr. Sex and Dr. Cruzado's leadership to provide programs there. It's also important to note that we want to focus on promoting student success. As a small institution, we have the opportunity to engage with individuals in a manner that really allows them to feel connected to the campus. Along this vein, we're also developing and resurrecting our relationships with the tribal colleges. I've visited the first of all three of the four, and I'm visiting the fourth next week. And we're bringing back to the table some of the collaborative partnerships that we've had in the past. And I do have to emphasize that as we do this, if you all don't know the city of Havre, I need to tell you what a supportive and fiercely protective community this is regarding this institution. I have never been at a community that has had a love for an institution like here. And I want to thank all of the community members who may be listening via streaming media or out in the audience here. I want to thank you all for that because it has made my job even more rewarding. You welcomed us into the community, and you are allowing us to grow in a way in which you support us, and you are such a partner in this, and so thank you all for that. On the next slide, I just want to give you a quick update on some of the things that we're doing. First off, in this particular building, if you went up to the other side of the building, you'll notice that there were labels on the table saying snack bar and hot service. We're literally laying out a remodeling of this building so that when you come back the next time, you'll see a completely different food service area. You'll see this area upgraded, all with a focus on improving services to our students and giving them an upgraded environment. We're very excited about that because we're using a project management approach in which various members of our community are all pulling together and doing their own part. We're not doing a turnkey operation where we just give the key to a contractor and come back. We're all participating and taking different roles in terms of designing the food service, painting the walls, that type of thing, in order to maximize the dollars that we have to do this. We're also doing other campus-wide improvements. I'm a big believer in the fact that you sell an institution first by how it looks. So we are hoping that you smell paint, because the exterior of this building is being repainted for the first time in more years than we care to admit. We're replacing sidewalks and paving and upgrading the technology, doing the kind of things that are necessary to create a conducive learning environment for our students. Also, and I wish I could take credit for this, but the entire road out in front of us is going to be repaved by the city and the state. And so that will create an additional nice introduction to the university. And finally, through the work of our foundation, we are replacing a 50-plus-year-old floor in the gymnasium, replacing all of the bleachers. So when we become the 3-time Frontier Conference champions, we will do that in a gymnasium that's been upgraded to meet those needs. So in closing, I just want to give you all some logistics. First off, restrooms. This is a 1960s building, folks, and so we want you to get your exercise to find the restrooms. The restrooms are upstairs, in the one staircase we have, or downstairs by the Pin and Q. And if you want to really get a workout, walk up the ramp to the other side of the building in the dining hall, and that's where the third set of restrooms is, all right? As for water bottles, you'll notice there are no water bottles. I don't believe in them. I believe in reducing, reusing, and recycling. So we did not provide them, but we have bottles of Culligan water, the dispensers down outside where the refreshments are. Just feel free to refill, but if you need a caffeine hit, we do have a soda machine right over this way and recycling in the back. So that part is particularly important to me. If you have questions about IT services, our folks are here to answer that. And also, for those of you who would like to enjoy some outstanding local theater, tonight, the Montana Actors Theater, who has their studio and their theater here on our campus, is doing a presentation of Richard III, and we're offering a free ticket and a free complimentary drink ticket to anybody who would like to attend the performance. So if you want to do that, you can pick up your tickets at the information desk right up there. So with that, again, we welcome you all to campus. Enjoy yourself while you're here, and don't hesitate to come back when you're not all in coats and ties and being official. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chancellor. This is normally the place on the agenda for the chair's comment, and after considerable conversation with members of the board over the last few days, regarding the recent news stories in the Missoulian, I'd like to comment that members of this board have been and continue to be deeply troubled and concerned by the news reports and the emails concerning the University of Montana. We expect that all that can be done to assist the campus and its leaders, and have directed the commissioner to use any and all resources available to work closely with President Engstrom and all on the University of Montana campus to further investigate the handling of sexual reports, the context of recent emails cited by the Missoulian, as well as other emails, and to advise the leadership on the University of Montana campus, as well as the full Board of Regents as to his findings. Montanans expect that our universities and our system will be run in an efficient and transparent manner, and we as a board share those expectations. We expect that each will continue to be evident in the Department of Justice investigation, and that transparency and cooperation will be demonstrated in the Department of Education investigation. We charge the commissioner to take all necessary steps, conduct his research in a timely fashion, and to work to reassure our students and all whom we serve across Montana that we are working to restore the public trust. As the conversation moves forward, this board expects cooperation, transparency, and accountability, and directs the Commissioner's Office to work thoroughly and swiftly. At this point, then, we will hear from board members and also visit with President Engstrom in this regard. So are there comments from members of the board? Regent Tuss.
Madam Chair, I know that there's growing anger with the public in Montana regarding this issue. They know that something is wrong and they want it fixed. I certainly support your notion of allocating whatever resources are necessary and required from the Commissioner's office to assist the University of Montana to get to the bottom of whatever we need to get to the bottom of on this particular issue. Keeping in mind two things that you have already mentioned, absolute transparency and public accountability on this particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from members of the board?
Madam Chair.
Regent Williams.
As the sole regent living and working in Missoula, I've been in close communication with our good President Royce Engstrom, as well as others within the administration at the university. I also, because of some of those conversations, I requested from our chair, Angela McLean, that all of the relevant university emails be made public, and they are now, and asked that they be reviewed by the regents and our staff, as well as the commissioner. The commissioner thankfully agreed to that, and we will now not only have full access to the emails, but my understanding from Chair McLean is that that we will inform the public soon of their full access to these emails. So they won't be our eyes only. We want the public to see these as well, and it's all in the instance of the transparency, whether people believe it or not, insisted upon by President Engstrom and agreed to by the commissioner and our chair. It does seem to me that the public needs to understand that the university system and the regents want the public fully aware of what's going on, so that they too, as the people we're all eventually obligated to serve, that they too fully understand what is a difficult situation at best with regard to Missoula, some University of Montana students. I want to thank particularly the commissioner for asking that you all and the public have full access to these emails. I think it will assist in President Engstrom and our efforts to be sure that the public has the public sees and knows what we see and know. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Further comments from members of the board?
Chair McLean. I think also, in addition to a strong focus on understanding what has happened and why, we need to refocus on what, as a system, as a Board of Regents, as a Commissioner's Office, we can do to support and ensure that we have the understanding of policies and procedures and all of the complex jurisdictional and privacy issues that go into these sort of incidents to ensure that students remain safe. One thing that I think I heard from both President Cruzado and President Engstrom at the last meeting as to how the board could help improve safety on campuses, how the Commissioner's Office could help improve safety, was to clarify and provide an opinion on all of the legal complexities as to how we should appropriately report and prosecute and deal with sexual assaults on campus. And I want to ensure that that's something that we continue to focus on, so that in the future, when incidents like this happen again, and we know that they will happen again, we know that we have the understanding to provide an appropriate response. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Teal. Regent Robinson.
Madam Chair, thank you. In a similar manner as Regent Teal had mentioned, it's important to understand how we've arrived at this point, although there's no changing what has happened. I think what is important is to also begin to understand, and I know this is already started and in place, but to understand from not just the University of Montana's perspective, but also Montana State University, as well as the other campuses too, that we're all a part of this that's going on right now. I think it's important to understand the direction that we're going, what action we are taking now, and not simply wait and see what either investigation will prove. Because I know and trust that the leadership that we've had is taking methodical steps in order to improve safety, in order to address those issues. But I certainly would like to hear from the campuses regarding what action is being taken from this point forward.
Thank you, Regent Robinson. Regent Krause.
Thank you. I feel a little apologetic that we didn't get on top of it the last time. That some of the issues that I tried to get to last time with how these things are reported and just the mechanisms of how they're reported. I think we continue to focus a lot on the public relations debacle, but I don't think we're focusing enough on the safety of the students and how the Missoula Police Force and the other authorities work together with the university and protect the students and the rights of students who are coming forward with these complaints. I think that's my concern right there. Just to start with, it's the women who have proffered, who are at least allegedly victims of these crimes, and how they've been assisted or not assisted. The issue of how the student code, whether it's being used as something a barrier to this, to the processes, whether it's something of an excuse for not taking actions or the wrong action. I was very disturbed with what was reported in the Missoulian about what it was in the emails. Where we need to go now is a little bit beyond us, because it does involve the interaction between the city and the university. It just so happens that's something that I do in Bozeman, Montana. And I'm not trying to contrast the two towns or the two universities in any way. We need to invest in the people and the facility and the time in understanding what we need to do to support these women or men who might come forward with sexual assault, how we assist them, and how we interact. And that's the key piece, that the emails and the football team and all the rest seems to me to be something of a smokescreen compared to, it's accountability, yes, but when it gets right down to it, how are you, President, and your staff going to work with the city and the county and the law and justice system to make sure that the next person that comes through the door with a report of rape or sexual assault is handled correctly. And I think that's what we need to focus on as regents, and that's what we need to focus on as university presidents. I have spoken to the Bozeman chief of police, one of the lieutenants there who has a grant that facilitates the voice system on campus, and the office on campus, and works with victim witness and facilitates the interaction there. That's the kind of thing that we need to have across the university system. And so I understand that there's a lot of interest in who shot John and which email went where, and who knew what. That's human nature, that's public nature, that's the nature of the beast. But here at this table and there at the university and there at the other university, let's keep in mind the safety of the students, women and men, and our intentions to make sure that we stop as much of this as we can in its tracks. And I could talk some more, but anything that I can do, or that the Bozeman Police Force, or that anything we can do, and I've talked to the county attorney and everyone else, to talk about how we're trying to do it in a different way. I'm sure I can volunteer this. I can volunteer that effort going forward, and me personally as well.
Thank you, Regent Krause. Regent Buchanan.
I appreciate hearing some of the other regions' comments. Probably contrary to some expectation, that there has not been a lot of dialogue, as much as I think is needed, about our approach to doing this. And so I appreciate hearing comments, and the firmness and resolution of expectation that this gets handled is clear. And I appreciate you as peers in that firmness. I want to share some of my thoughts on it. This is on my list of something to talk about because I've gotten an enormous amount of correspondence from people around Montana, as I'm sure we all have. I think we all agree the underlying issue, and I think it should be issues, are very concerning. Things that are issues not only on these campuses and communities, but they're very concerning, and we've got to address them. The tenor of some of the comments from the public has changed, and it's become, to me, a little less about the issue. It's more about how we are conducting ourselves and managing the issue. And that, to me, is of real importance. And I think that's why I feel compelled to get engaged and am supportive of the intent of the chair's message as we started. We live in a state where, as we've all talked about, not only transparency and public light of day, and those things are expected, but I think, and it's consistent with the reasons we put people in leadership positions, an expeditious resolution is also expected. And that's why I feel like it's important that we get involved. I try to respond to every email that comes to me from people that send it, and I've been only able to say we are going to get involved. We are going to get involved, and I feel like that this is the right approach, what we're choosing to do. Nobody, no president, no campus administrator, nobody wants a region in their office weighing in and overseeing everything. That's not right. That's not how the system is set up. So to request that the commissioner becomes more engaged, I think, is extremely important. And I don't see it only as sit over, watch, and see what's happening type of role. I want Clay in there because I trust Clay is got a keen sense of what is expected in this state as far as the strength and leadership that we expect. And I know that working together with President Engstrom and your team, that we can find the way to articulate the steps that are being taken that will satisfy the state that we are taking this seriously. I know you are. I know your campus and your team are doing that based on the protocol of how this system is set up. Our staffer is Clay, and I want him at the table helping not only gauge what's happening on, but providing input and helping come up with a solution, because patience is running thin across the state for resolution to these issues. And as I said, to me, it's as much about how we are conducting ourselves as not only state employees, as citizens in this process. And I have confidence that good faith has been behind every decision that's been made. I stand behind the decisions that we've made as far as the people we've put in place to lead these institutions and lead the system, and am looking forward to coming to a swift resolution as it comes to these issues. And like I say, I really, when we made the decision as a board, one of the things to hire Commissioner Christian, one of the things that I understood and look forward to is decisiveness, swiftness in action, and look forward to having Commissioner Christian involved in this process a heck of a lot more, and know that the voice from this member of the board is resolution is expected, and expected very swiftly. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. Commissioner Christian.
Members of the board, Regent Buchanan, Chairman McLean, I certainly appreciate the input. We are a public institution. That's what we all serve. That's what you all signed up to serve as board members. That is the unique thing that lies in front of us, and that's an important part of it. We will maintain that trust, and I appreciate the comments, the suggestions, the thoughts that go behind this. It is through better communication, that open and transparent university system that makes us public, that we will see some success in this, and we will move in that direction as expeditiously as we possibly can. I do, and I don't want my next two comments to be taken as anything other than that we will charge forward as instructed here and do what we can. We absolutely have serving the students at heart. I do want to rewind the tape just a bit, though, to point out sort of where this began, because I think it's an important part of the conversation that is somehow getting a bit lost in it. And I think Regent Buchanan's right on track. We're starting to discuss more about the manner at which we go about this as opposed to what it is we're trying to do. But I was, as board chair, late sometime last year, invited to participate in a phone call between President Engstrom and then Commissioner Stearns. And President Engstrom asked for the call and brought to Commissioner Stearns' attention that he'd received comments and heard a number of rumors about sexual assault on the campus, and he was deeply concerned about it. And from that point, the president said, look, I really feel like I need to look into this, and it's going to be a rocky road, and it's going to gain some press, and we're going to have some obstacles to clear. But I feel like it's my responsibility to get to the bottom of this. And that is the first word I ever heard of sexual assault on the University of Montana campuses. And that's the kind of leadership that you all are looking for. Now, has it been that rocky road? Yeah, it has been. But I think the president knew what he was getting into, and I think he did so to protect my daughter on campus, as well as 7,000 or 8,000 other women that attend our university, and that's the right decision, and he made the right decision. And honestly, I don't ever want him to think that he didn't because of what's been surfaced. We knew, and we've said at various meetings, that as we ask to be open and transparent, and we seek for more victims to come forward and tell their stories so we can try to help, and we can find the right place to interject, and we can find the right services on campus to get to the bottom of what is really underneath all of this, that we were going to be here. And this is where we need to be. And it's an uncomfortable spot, and I realize that. I realize as board members it's an uncomfortable spot. I can tell you as a commissioner new to this job, I could think of an easier beginning. I'm sure the president could think of an easier first few years, but we've taken this on, and we've done it for the right reasons. And ultimately the right reasons is to make campus a safer place. And we're going to do that. I also said at the January meeting and the March meeting that we're talking about sexual assault. And as much as we all want this fixed, we're talking about sexual assault. And that's a crime that's been around for about as long as the history books are written. And it's going to take a shift, and it's a needed shift. And I think the president recognizes it's a needed shift on his campus. But those are cultural shifts, and it's going to include change of mindset. And where those mindsets can't be changed, it's going to require a change of personnel and a change of leadership. And those are tough decisions, and those are all pretty monumental battles that the president's going to have to fight, that he is fighting, that he's already fought a few, and I have confidence that he will continue on this track. And like I say, I never want him to look back on that decision and say, wish I'd have taken the easy road out, because we didn't. We started down this path for safety's sake, and we're going to get there. And I wish I could sit here today and tell you guys that I think that this road's come to an end. I don't, honestly, but I can tell you that the confidence you've placed in me and the confidence that you've placed in the president is founded, and we're going to continue to work hard on this thing, and we're going to do so in an open and transparent method. And do I think we can improve on that? Absolutely. I mean, when I look back at the last 6 months, are there ways we can do things better? Absolutely. And that's part of the learning process. It's interesting as we are public that every email we write, and I think if everyone looks back in their own private lives over the last year, we air publicly every email we've sent, every word we've spoken. That's an interesting way to do business, but it's the right way to do business in a public university system, and we're going to continue to do that. And we will be transparent, and we will provide the rest of the emails that are part of the Freedom of Information Act, and we will do so as quickly as we can. And will there be things in there that we wish were written different looking back at them a year later? Probably, but that's okay. It's all part of the process. And we'll work to that end to get to where we believe the system needs to be. And that is where student safety is the absolute first priority on everyone's mind. I certainly know it is on the board. I certainly have heard that from board members today. I commend you for taking that stand. That is what the board is here to serve, is students. You can't serve a student without getting to the safety issue first, and that's where we'll start this conversation. We will proceed ahead full speed. We will work together. The president and I we've got conversations underway on where we will improve our ability to communicate. And that's an important piece, and that's where we'll get, and we will get there soon. I just don't want to set false expectations of when we'll get there, because it's a long road, and it's a road that we're tackling sexual assault, and that's something that society's tried to tackle a lot longer than the president and I have been around. But we're going to do it, and we're going to do the best we can to make campus the safest place we can. And when we fail at that, we're going to have all the resources available to help the victims and their families recover as best we can. And we're going to do so in a way that restores public trust in that process. And I realize that there's been some tarnishment there, and that we need to fix that. But I think we can, and it will absolutely be our focus. And I appreciate you all reassuring that needs to be our focus. We take that to heart, and I appreciate that you pledge what resources we need to get there. And we will work to that end, and we'll do so starting immediately.
Thank you, Commissioner Christian. President Ingstrom?
Regent McLean, members of the board, thank you for your comments this morning. In the interest of transparency and keeping you informed, I would like to present a report, if I could. It will take me about 10 minutes, Madam Chair, if that's agreeable to you. Okay. Okay, thank you. I want to give you a report, and I'll keep it as factual as I can. And I present this report not as a defense of our actions, but just information for you, so that you know what we have done, what actions we have taken, and the status of the report, the status of the whole situation. I want to make sure that you are hearing directly from me in terms of our progress on this matter, and getting your information from places other than the media. And so I'm going to go through 4 areas, if I could. I want to give you the status of our own investigation of the sexual assaults. I want to give you the status of our involvement in the federal investigations. I want to enumerate for you the changes that we have or that we are putting in place to make the campus a safer place. And then I want to comment on some of the communications that have gone on. So let me do that. So as is required, as you know, by federal regulation, we initiated our own investigation into the reported sexual assaults immediately after the report started in early December 2011. The investigations have been done with the involvement of our Title IX coordinator and our Dean of Students through the Student Conduct Code. As you know, we also enlisted the help of an outside investigator in the early stages of this. There have been 11 reported cases of sexual assault that are under this investigation that were reported since December 2011. Some of those assaults, as I think you are aware, took place before December 2011, but were not reported until after December 2011. The university has in place a clear Title IX policy and a clear student conduct code that provides due process to the victims and to the alleged perpetrators. And we have followed that process methodically throughout. The disposition of the cases as of today are as follows. So there were 11 cases to begin with. 3 of those cases have along the way been dismissed for lack of evidence that an assault actually took place. 2 of the cases were not pursued because the victim did not wish to pursue the case, resulted in no reliable means of investigating. In one of the cases, the alleged perpetrator fled the country and will not be allowed back into the university. You know about that one. Here's the part I want you to really hear, though. 4 cases resulted in sanctions against 8 students, one of those students has overturned that sanction through the appeal process, which was done at the level of the university court and upheld by me as president. The other 7 students are no longer with the university, and they will not be permitted to return. So the message I want you to hear here, and I want the public to hear, is that we have taken action in each of these cases, and there have been consequences to the students who were the perpetrators in this case. So 7 students have been sanctioned with sanctions that no longer allow them to be a part of our university community. 1 case is still under appeal at the level of the university court, and that court decision now is on my desk. So to get at the heart of the matter, it seems to me, you and I and the public expect action to be taken when someone conducts a sexual assault. That action needs to be taken through due process. We have those processes in place, they function, and we take action as a result of them. Let me move to the federal investigations. So as you know, the Department of Justice initiated a highly visible investigation into the University of Montana, the Missoula Police Department, and the Missoula County Attorney's Office. The federal investigation through the Department of Justice has followed up with a request for information of the university with which we are fully complying. The information is due June 1st, and we are in discussion with them now as to how to handle some of the confidential aspects of that information that they requested. But we will respond by June 1st and with a full packet of information, and it is a full packet. The request for information was 6 pages long. We have stated publicly and sincerely that we will cooperate fully with the federal investigation. If there are aspects of our approach on the campus that need improvement and that can be identified through the federal investigation, we will be receptive to those recommendations. I expect that this investigation will be active for several months, maybe longer. The Department of Education has also notified us of an investigation, saying that they will cooperate with the justice investigation. As of today, Education has not requested any further information. So those investigations are in motion. We are fully complying, fully cooperative, and look forward to the feedback and the recommendations that we receive from those investigations. We have put in place a number of changes, or we are in the process of implementing a number of changes to make the campus a safer place. An enhanced educational program that will be in place this fall semester that will include mandatory online instruction of every student prior to finalizing registration, and I mean every student. A new student athlete code of conduct that was designed around well-defined violations, clear sanctions, and an independent athletic conduct team to impose sanctions. A cooperative program with Missoula around Call 911 as a means to clarify the reporting of sexual assaults. The Missoula dispatchers have a new script from which they operate, so when a student calls 911, the dispatcher can direct that student to the various resources available, including reporting through law enforcement, including reporting through the student conduct code, and including getting care at the confidential student assault resource center on our campus. We now have mandatory reporting of sexual assault by employees, as is now required by your own policy that you're looking at later on in this meeting as well. We've added we are in the process of adding an additional campus police officer specifically to increase coverage around the residence halls during the nighttime hours. We just submitted 2 days ago a grant application by a group of committed faculty and staff members to add an additional position to the Sexual Assault Resource Center on our campus. We brought in the on-campus presentation of Men Can Stop Rape, and we have a chapter forming for male students on our campus. We've had teleconferencing with national experts in sexual assault law, policy, and practice. We are now in the process of looking to employ a crisis communication professional, and I'll come back to that in just a couple of minutes. In the area of communication, from the beginning, we committed to doing two things. And I mean this from day one. We committed to doing what was right for the students who were involved and to being proactive about communicating. Have we achieved that second goal? You'll have to be the judge of that, but let me just itemize the way that we have approached that. We held community forums in Missoula, one of them within a matter of days after the sexual assaults were first surfaced in December. A second community forum in January. The first one was attended by 150 to 200 or so people. The second one by, I would say, about 50 people. We've held multiple campus forums, forums involving students, faculty, staff, administration. I have been present at most of those forums. We worked with Regent Teal on the forum that he put together for the students in Butte. Every piece of written communication that I have made as public statements has been posted on my website and available to the public and anyone else to read, including the reports that I've given to you along the way. We've responded to countless responses to the press, both locally and nationally. We have been compliant and cooperative to the best of our ability with these recent FOIA requests, and I want to assure you that we have been as cooperative as we can with law enforcement at all levels that have contacted us. I would venture to say that no institution has been more open about this matter than we have been. I remain convinced that in the long run, our openness will contribute to increased awareness of sexual assault, increased reporting, and I think we've seen that already, and ultimately a safer campus. I'm also keenly aware that in the short run, there's been a cost to the reputation of our great university as people hear about these issues and as some people have disagreed with our actions. I clearly acknowledge that the public is frustrated with certain aspects of communication, particularly who was involved in these incidents and what are the sanctions against them. We believe that we are required by confidentiality laws both federal and state, to remain silent on those questions about precise student involvement and student identities. We will certainly cooperate with law enforcement when they have investigations going and when asked to do so, but I need to reiterate that we cannot initiate law enforcement action on behalf of victims without the consent of those victims. The other area that people are frustrated about are personnel matters perceived to be related to these incidents. On advice of legal counsel and out of respect for the individuals involved, I won't comment publicly on those personnel actions. In summary, in the end, the actions of a relatively small number of men on our campus have led to shattered lives of a number of women on our campus. We need to keep our focus on where the problem lies and what our goals are. All along, I have said our goals are threefold: to eliminate sexual assault, to care for those who are assaulted, and to rid our campus of assaulters. We will continue to do everything we can to accomplish those objectives. It has required, and it will continue to require, unpleasant and controversial decisions. Nobody wants to reach closure on this matter more than me. In the meantime, we'll continue to move forward on the business of the university, helping students realize their dreams, serving the state through education, research, and service. The usual business of the university has continued. I think if you look at the report that we submitted, the routine report that we submitted for this board meeting, you will see tremendous accomplishments, and I mean tremendous accomplishments on the part of our students and faculty members. That is what we need to keep in motion. The work on sexual assault is critical, it is highly important. We've done our best to respond to that issue aggressively, responsibly, but at the same time, keeping the business of the university moving forward. I'm open to any advice from any of you, any specific comments, feedback, or questions that you have. I will do my best to respond to anything you ask of me. And I am serious when I say if there are aspects of this that you think need to be handled differently, then I need to know about those from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate your comments, your transparency, and your cooperation. And Commissioner, we look forward to continued cooperation and conversation between you and the President and all of the folks on the University of Montana campus. At this point now, we will take our scheduled break, and we will come back at 9:50 to begin with the Commissioners and System Report. Visit with the Commissioner and hear a systems report. So Commissioner Christian.
You know, it's sort of in the essence of time. I think as President Engstrom alluded to, there is some incredible things going on around the system. The campus reports, if you haven't read them, you need to. I certainly, as your new commissioner, have had the opportunity to tour a number of facilities. I was in Bozeman last week, looked at some of the incredible research that's being done there. It just is absolutely fascinating as an individual, but something that makes me extremely proud as a commissioner to see what's going on around the system. I, of course, attended my child's graduation at the University of Montana last weekend. One of those days in Missoula that we all lived through the winters for. It was about 70 degrees and clear blue, and it was just outstanding. Had an incredibly talented honorary doc in Warren Wilcox that did a great job, and our good friend and former Commissioner Stearns was the commencement speaker and did a wonderful job. Got to go to Bozeman and have dinner with Jake Jabs, who's a unique individual that is making great things in Montana happen for his vision of what Montana education can continue to be. And so I just want to say to all the campuses, as we hit commencement and we know that 10 or 12,000 people graduate and achieve their educational attainments, there's a lot of great things happening within the Montana University system, and something you all as board members should be very proud to be participating in. It's a great feeling, and there is a lot of people that are highly appreciative of the efforts of all of you and the efforts of the system to provide those opportunities to families. We do have an enrollment report that I believe, yes, I'm right, the man with two last names or two first names will deliver to us. Mr. Tyler Trevor.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. I won't comment on the two last names because I believe there's other people that have that affliction. I have a very brief enrollment report for you today. Each May, we take the opportunity to reflect back on the academic year, although this is called a fiscal year enrollment report because it relates to student FTE. We calculate an annual average FTE for you new board members. That is the number that we take with us over time. We use to work with that number and our budget. It comprises fall plus spring average. Actually, fall has the previous summer added to it just to make it a little bit more complex. But with that said, we can then take a look over time and see how we're doing. This will be the first end of the year enrollment report where I'm not going to say we are at an all-time record for the Montana University system. Although we're close, we're only 116 FTE off. As you can see from the blue bars up there, that from 2008 to 2011, we were at an all-time record-setting pace. We grew by 6,500 FTE over the past 10 years. And most of that, 80%, has occurred between 2008 and 2011. So we have a slight drop-off. Thanks, Summer. So we can take a look at one-year comparison. Most of these slides here are tables. They're for your own viewing, a little less conducive to a presentation, but I'll highlight some of the key points on each page. We have an overall a 0.3% decline in FTE. That the resident undergraduate group witnessed the largest drop at 404 FTE. Our non-resident undergraduates experienced an actual increase at 286. And then I like to always look at not just a one-year comparison, but over a 10-year period of time. And actually now I'm seeing that it should say 2002 to 2012 on that yellow table. It's funny how I don't recognize those until I get up in front of a couple hundred people. Thank you, Summer. The 10-year comparison, it can be also looked at by groups at level of colleges, community colleges, COTs, four-year campuses, kind of a traditional way of splitting out FTE there. And what we find is that our COTs have experienced the largest percent increase over the past 10 years, 87% growth. Keep it in mind, though, that the most numerical growth has occurred at our four-year campuses at over or close to 3,200 FTE. And then we could take a one-year and 10-year look at just resident FTE. Remember, resident FTE is what's key for our budgets. It's what the legislature analyzes, and so we split that off, and we can look at it by institution. If you look at the one-year change in resident FTE, majority of that decline occurred at the community colleges, not to single them out, but out of 408 FTE, we dropped 281 of those FTE at the community colleges. Then moving on to 10-year, 2/3 of the growth in resident student enrollment has occurred at our two-year campuses. That's something to really take note on. That's 2,600 FTE out of the 4,300 FTE in resident students has occurred at two-year campuses over the last 2 years, 10 years. Equally, we look at non-resident FTE, same type of comparison, 1 to 10. Non-resident enrollment grew by 3.5% across all sectors over a 10-year period of time, 33% increase in non-resident FTE. Most of that, by a long shot, occurs at our four-year campuses. Next slide. So there's been a lot of talk about, so what's the change, what's the reason for the change in enrollment? We've been at a record-setting pace, and a lot of that, we know, relates to our economy. One factor, though, not to forget, and we've been looking at this for the past 5-6 years, has been the projected output from our public high schools. And it's not so much the output, it's the population age. There's a dip. Generation X didn't have as many kids. So it's a natural decline that we're looking at here. It doesn't relate to graduation rates at our high schools. But if you look past over the last 7 years, the yield of students, graduates from Montana's public high schools has dropped by 700 students. Yet we've set in record enrollment growth over that period of time until this year. And so there's a couple key points there. Our capture rate, so the percent of those students that come to us immediately following high school graduation, has actually gone up over that period of time. In the academic year 2010, it was at an all-time high at 35%, and dropped a bit this past or a year ago to 33.8%. But that's part of the cause there. If you look back to the fall 2011 high school head count report that I had in the fall, first-time resident enrollments were down 360 students. So that's something we need to keep in mind. That's probably going to be a trend going through about 2017. And then we take a look at who are the gainers, who dropped. Most notably, MSU Bozeman up almost 500 FTE from last year to this year, and then some are at the 10-year rate. At the 10-year comparison, we have the campuses listed there without their integrated COTs or the 2-year programs inside of them. So you can take a look at the ranking there as well. And finally, not a slide to view, but just more to say, we have a bunch of detail related to this. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. This slide then links to a more detailed slide, and as you might guess, it just keeps getting worse from that point on. So I'd be happy to take any questions, Madam Chair. That concludes my enrollment report.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Okay. Thank you. Yes, Regent Krause.
Thank you. How does the enrollment report that you've just given us relate to how the campuses are funded?
Madam Chair, Regent Krause, that's a great question. I believe if you went back 5 years ago, there was a very strong relationship between FTE and a formula. Over time, with the College Affordability Plan and our kind of base plus funding, it has taken less of a role. However, we do look at the amount of FTE on each side of the system being almost 50-50. Ran some complex models recommended by a consultant off of that, weighting FTE and so on and so forth, to come up with the distribution of that lump. So I guess the long explanation, or the short explanation to my long answer is, it plays a role, but not as much as a formula as one might think.
So we've come far away from the formula funding of my youth, then. That would be the case. We're not essentially doing vouchers to resident students and saying, go anywhere you want.
Madam Chair, no, Regent Krause, no, I would say yes, it has come a long way since just a sheer formula. And with the stipulation that we have not left FTE behind in the funding model, however.
Madam Chair, I might add, there used to be a reversionary clause within the lump funding that we got from the state of Montana that disappeared as part of the College Affordability Plan in the 2007 session. And so the formulaic piece of that used to be quite ingrained because we had to answer that question for state funds. And we have moved somewhat away from that. We've somewhat we've had some conversations, and we did, as part of some adjustments made a year ago, return to a piece. And although it is not a literal formulaic approach to it, we certainly have committed as part of ongoing discussions to revisit that enrollment FTE component on sort of an every other year basis, and to look at a historic average over what the last 2 or 3 years, I think, is what we decided, a 3-year weighted average, to look at how the lump is divided, at least between the two sides of the system, so that FTE has a component part, but is not a formulaic piece.
Thank you, Regent Teal.
Yeah, just a follow-up, Commissioner Christian. Do you know, by policy, I mean, what is that time period? At what point is that looked at again, and who's involved in those discussions? What's the process there?
Well, what we should have said earlier, and needs noting, is that Deputy Commissioner Robinson is not here today. He is with his son in Seattle, who's recovering from some health issues, and I was going to mention earlier and I forgot, but we certainly wish him and his family well, and Seth in a speedy recovery. He is doing much better, and so everyone's thoughts, prayers, and otherwise are being helpful, and Mick has sent lots of appreciation back to the entire group for that. But do you know the actual?
Yep. Madam Chair, Regent Teal, that would be a spring from now, during the legislative session, then following the legislative session, when we are analyzing the distribution of the lump, that the Commissioner's Office would then use various models. One of them would be the 3-year weighted average that would be applied to, I'm getting into too much detail here, but a Dennis Jones model that to inform us of how that distribution might look if that model were used versus a clean 50-50 split between the two campuses.
And I think ultimately any change in that will, as it has in the past, come back to the board for approval. There's no automatic function within a formulaic approach that this all happens. We'll review it. And I think it is every other year with the 3-year weighted average. We review it, and then we'll come to the board with recommendations on distribution of the loan.
Thank you. President Cruzado.
Madam Chair and members of the board, I just wanted to respectfully request that given the rate of pace and growth in the system, and since this is not tied to policy, if it's possible for the regions to take a look at this distribution on a yearly basis, that can certainly help us immensely to better prepare for our budget allocations, and the most important thing is to serve our students. Waiting every other year, and I'm sorry that I did not remember that timeline, but might severely compromise some of the services that our students need and deserve. I think that both both universities and every campus will benefit from a yearly revision of those numbers.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, like I said, any sort of adjustment to those numbers, I think, needs to come to the board. The frequency at which we look at them, we budget in a biennial basis. We could take a look at whether it makes sense to look at them on an annual basis. But as we did the last time we moved money, which was a year or so ago, we phased that in so as to be very, very careful that we don't make such sharp budget movements for either side of the divide that it creates immediate problems in terms of staffing, and those things have to be worked into the plans, I think. And I would hate to see us. I think the campus need to be able to rely on that plans. That's certainly the mindset we used when we did it a year ago with the phase-in process. And I think if we try to make too sharp a turns in that, it becomes very difficult for campuses to have ongoing lengthy plans.
Regent Buchanan?
I think it's clear there's some curiosity as to these different models that Deputy Commissioner Trevor mentioned, and I think I might second what Dr. Cruzado said as far as at least understanding what revisions might be made in the event of using one of these other models. So even if it's not intended to force action at this stage, I think that I know I've got some learning as to what the other models might mean as far as implications to each of the funding distributions. So I would encourage us to possibly look at what, even if we're not intending to take action, what kind of action might be taken in the event of dramatic changes related to this.
Thank you. Regent Krause?
Yeah, and of course, I understand I haven't been to Helena to get the indoctrination yet, but that's going to be coming soon, or orientation yet. But that might have been a slip of the tongue. For me, and I look at the ranked by percentage FTE growth by campus, FY02 to FY12, and it'd be interesting to juxtapose that to funding and just, it would be helpful for me when I do get up to talk about this. But I think it would be interesting to, and I thought last year what was said was that you were going to do this recalculation and then revisit it in a year. If that wasn't the case, then of course I'm wrong. But the Regents did adopt a new program, and it does make some sense that they would test the assumptions of that program relatively quickly.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Thank you. Does that conclude the Commissioner's report?
No, I think we've got
Retention.
Madam Chair, we have two other items on the report, and one of them I'm slotted to talk about, and I can move through that awfully quickly. The other one is Smart Buildings Initiative update by our student contingent that is working on that project. So I'd like to give them a 5 to 10 minute slot there. So if we open up the retention document, just 2 seconds to explain or remind Regents that this is something that we bring to each Regents meeting that we call system and campus dashboard indicators. What you can kind of decode that as is this is the detailed information at the campus level that we use in the strategic plan. One of our metrics in the plan is retention. So this is the unfolding of it down to the campus level. And something that's really unique and interesting about this report is that this isn't just institutionally based retention. We're able to track students across the system. So the first line you see as, for instance, MSU Bozeman, and you see 71, 71, 72, up to 74%. And underneath it are percentages that are slightly higher, 3 to 4% higher. Those are taking into consideration students that transferred over that first year. So we're looking at first-time students, first-time full-time students that entered one of our campuses, MSU Bozeman in this case, that came back for a second year, 74% in 2010. But if you looked across the entire system, it would have gone up to 77%. So what we're actually doing there is measuring one-year transfer as well. There's a summary of the findings in the second half of this page, on the second page. You can stay on that first page, though, however, Summer. I'll just point out some of the things. It's always good to compare to regional averages. The regional 4-year average, WICHE, our 14 comparator states, the aggregate there is 77%. We as a system are at 76%, so we're right in there, although the WICHE average is institutional, and the 76-year is system-wide for us. So if you compare it into our leading campuses, UM and MSU at 74 and 75%, we're slightly below the regional average for retention, although we're making progress on catching that. If you take a look at our 2-year campuses, the regional average 58%. Our leading campuses, UM Helena comes to mind at 61% retention rate, is above the regional average. And then we have campuses that fall under across the spectrum from being 61 on down to 48%. I always like to point out what campuses are leading the way in increasing retention rates over the past 5 years. And so in the analysis, I have a list there. UM Helena COT, number one at an increase of 13.7 percentage points in institutional retention rate. That's pretty giant increase. Thinking if you increase 1 or 2% per year, that's good growth. And then we have UM Western associate degree cohort. increasing 10 percentage points over a 5-year period of time. MSU Great Falls COT 5.3 institutionally, but 10% system-wide, so they're getting their students to continue on. Western Baccalaureate cohort increased to 5% institutionally and 8% system-wide, and Dawson at 5.5% institutionally. So, Madam Chair, that's my report. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. And well done to those institutions that have increased their retention of our students. Okay then, so on that agenda then we move to the Smart Buildings Initiative update. This is exciting stuff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Regents. My name is Blake Bjornson, student at Montana State University in Mechanical Engineering. And this is Bryn. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. Madam Chair, members of the board, thanks for having us this morning. I'm Bryn Hagfors, and our third colleague here is Mr. Zach Brown. He's the newest ASUM president. He wasn't able to join us today because he's in Missouri accepting his Truman Scholarship, so we'd like to extend a congratulations to Zach for that. Blake and I are here today to provide you a little update on our Smart Buildings Initiative. I think we're going to first kind of share with you the conceptual framework that we have and moving forward, what we will be doing. Blake and Zach have put together a plan for what they're planning on doing this summer, so we'll fill you up on we'll fill you in on what's going on there. Next slide, please. So, Smart Buildings Initiative. Let's provide a little bit of background here. Part of the beauty of any campus is its history, its age, but unfortunately, with that history comes some inefficiency in the buildings, in the heating systems, in the electrical systems, in general waste. And so we saw an opportunity here, the students presenting today, and Zach, that we could improve efficiency across campuses. And that efficiency is going to come through realizing cost savings by increasing the energy efficiency of existing buildings on campus. Part of the rationale for that, like I said, cost savings, but also we think there's a real chance to improve efficiency in the education for students across campuses. There are a large number of majors existing in the MUS program right now that could benefit from more hands-on learning experiences and from improved opportunities for internships, for real research opportunities, and we think it enhances that goal of University of Montana, Montana State, and MUS efficiency and stewardship to move forward with this project. So this project then, like I said, is going into existing buildings, improving the energy efficiency, providing significant savings to taxpayers, to tuition payers. And then the next step from that is we plan to reinvest these savings in two different areas. The first would be to promote more energy efficiency upgrades on buildings across campus. Blake will talk a little bit about the accounting of that in just a second. And then the second part of that would be to reinvest the savings from this program into educational opportunities for students on campus. And the most exciting part for us right now is that this program we envision as being self-sustaining. These energy efficiency upgrades will pay for themselves over time and allow this program to be fiscally responsible and self-sustaining over a number of years after these improvements have been made initially. So next slide, please. So the main thrust behind this program is that it is all about students. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of majors across the MUS system that we see a real opportunity for involvement in. And two of these really exciting newer programs at the Gallatin College, they've started just recently, and I think it was approved by you guys in the March meeting, is that right? Weatherization project. They have a weatherization program at the Gallatin College, the 2-year, and we see this as a real applicable, relevant chance for them to become involved in the university system and provide real experience, job training moving forward. The second is the energy technology program at the COT in Missoula. We think that those two provide these programs will have a real opportunity to get involved and provide resume builders, job training experience, et cetera, for students at those programs. And then there's also a chance to branch into the four-year universities. We could talk about engineering programs at MSU, business in Missoula, environmental studies, economics. A number of majors could be impacted by a project like this, and we're working hard right now to create opportunities for students within those programs to become involved with this project. So from here, Blake will talk about what we're doing moving forward.
So Zach and I were able to get a little bit of funding from the Commissioner's Office to work on this project for the summer and come up with an action plan. And we're going to be focusing on these 5 points, and we can jump to the next slide. The first one is equipment and personnel. What do we need on the ground to make this project happen? we've already started at Bozeman. We're doing a lot of programming, and so we've actually already hired a energy conservation manager who's going to be working on these kinds of projects. And a similar position is being talked about at the UM campus. So we've got the personnel stuff going. Equipment. In order to kind of measure these savings, we need smart meters on our buildings. We need to be able to measure what's going into the buildings in terms of the water, the gas, electricity, steam, those kinds of things. So that's a big part of this program. The next part is, as Bryn was mentioning, how do we engage actually not only students in these various programs, but also faculty and staff? How do we get all different perspectives from the campuses engaged in this program? And so one of the tasks that Zach and I will be doing is finding all of the programs that might be able to touch this, finding contacts and talking to them about the possibility of what the possibility is for their program to participate in this project. The accounting is The accounting is a big part of this. We want to be able to measure the savings from energy conservation, and as Bryn said, reinvest that on the campus. It doesn't have to be all for additional conservation. Could go into academics, student success. Some of it could go to the taxpayer as a saving to the taxpayer. But we want those savings to be well accounted for so that we know exactly what this work is doing. So Zach and I are going to put together a task force. Some of you may be called on to participate to kind of figure out a way to account for those savings and devise a plan of what to do with those savings. Okay, now we can jump. Fourth thing is talking about a metric. What's a tangible way to measure what we're doing, or what's a tangible goal to say here's what we want to accomplish on each of our campuses. One that exists is LEED EBOM. EBOM stands, LEED is, as many of you know, a sustainability certificate for buildings. EBOM stands for Existing Buildings Operations and Maintenance. So that's for buildings that already exist, obviously. So that's a potential. We haven't set on that at all, but that's a potential way to say here's a building that's really efficient. Okay, and the last is how to make this system-wide. We've got some work, as we've mentioned, going on at the four-year flagship campuses. We want to reach out to the affiliate campuses and find ways to do these energy conservation work in the whole system.
So just to provide a little bit of context, Zach Brown, our third colleague, and I just finished up our campaign running for ASUM executives at the University of Montana. And along the campaign trail, we pushed the Smart Buildings Initiative pretty hard. And a good part of the feedback that we received is, thank God somebody's finally doing something about this, you know? So we go and I spoke in one of my economics classes in our campaign about the Smart Buildings Initiative, and one of my teachers approached me after class and said, wow, somebody's actually doing something about this. I went out on December 5th and took a bunch of pictures of windows that were open in the liberal arts building on the University of Montana campus because, as you can see on the slide, it was negative 18 degrees Celsius, so around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and because of the heating system in that building, hot air rises and they just pump it from the first floor, and the third floor becomes just unbearably hot. So kids sit in there, take their coats off, open up windows, and you can literally see the dollars flowing out the windows, you know, those little heat waves. So what we learned from that is that this project's extremely marketable. This resonates with students, this resonates with faculty, and I think students, faculty, staff, they're interested in getting involved. And not only that, but the LEED EBOM certification, should we choose to pursue that route, makes it a very marketable project for the university system, proving efficiency to taxpayers, proving efficiency to tuition payers. So, go ahead. And so now, Blake already touched on this a little bit, but we've already secured funding for an energy conservation manager position at Montana State University. And we're working hard right now with administration at the University of Montana to secure funding for an engineering position that ideally would be hired from someone within the program later on down the road. It's a job creation mechanism for engineering students. And then also Blake mentioned the energy monitoring equipment pieces, and we're happy to report that at the University of Montana now we've purchased 21 such energy monitoring pieces of equipment to monitor the electricity being used on campus, and those are in the process of being placed around campus right now, so that we can kind of determine which buildings are going to be prioritized in this program. Anything to add?
Yeah, I want to add, a big part of this is talking about what we already do. Many of you know about the energy performance contract with McKinstry that MSU has. Well, that's one of these 22 items on this, and this is how an engineer markets. This is a document from our facilities that talks about all of the great things that we're already doing. And so part of this is figuring out ways to show the world what we're doing, to show them all of these things in something that's maybe a little more meaningful. So I just wanted to add that we are doing a lot of stuff already.
Be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Regent Teal.
Don't really have a question. Just want to say, as I think both of you know, how excited I am about this. And I think that you hit it right, Blake, in that this is an area where we can lead the way nationally in both energy efficiency and experiential learning. And I think for both of us, and a lot of the students in this room, our best experiences are the most educational experiences we've had have been when we get the opportunity to improve our campus and our community in real ways. And so that's one of the components of this program that I'm so excited about, is that you personify the way that students are going to be involved in improving their campuses and improving the efficiency of their campuses, and then also communicating that and those efforts to communities and legislators and people around the nation. One thing I would encourage you to do is, in the task force that you talked about, I'd encourage you to get involvement from legislative and community partners, people who would have an interest in seeing this work and might be able to provide some networking to make this something that goes beyond just the university as well. So thanks a lot for all of your work and for the presentation.
Thank you,
And I
Regent
forgot
Teal.
to mention, in September, we'll be coming back with this action plan and discussing the 5 topics that I said we'd be working on. So you'll hear back from us in September.
Thank you very much. The board passed this resolution a little over a month ago, and we did so, I think, with great enthusiasm. And we wrapped our hands around it because it was a student-led initiative, and you folks are great ambassadors along with Regent Teal of this. So we look forward to your presentation and the conversation in September. Thank you.
Thanks.
President Cruzado.
Now, Madam Chair, I just needed to say that I wanted to commend these wonderful students, the students that they also represent, because there are legions behind them, I can surmise. And what a wonderful lesson. What a wonderful lesson in leadership and vision for the future, for the Montana University system and for the entire state and the region. Several recommendations when you think about what to do with the dollars that you generate from economies. It might be that you might want to consider returning those to the units that generate those economies. That way you create a real enthusiasm, and then they can see that as an opportunity in future investment proposals. The other thing that comes to mind is that in your task force, I'm sure that if you sent an invitation to the other campuses, then you will have more excited student leaders, because I'm sure that on both universities and in each of our campuses, we do have students that feel passionately about this as well. So congratulations, job well done, and thanks for making us feel so proud.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner
Thank you,
Christian.
guys. It's exciting stuff. It's great to see it moving forward. Madam Chair, that does complete the Commissioner and System reports. If we could, and we don't really even need to leave our chairs, but if we could just take a couple-minute technical break for PBS to reset a few things for us and help us get some stuff online, we would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll stand recessed for a short time. Stay close.
Committee discussions to help us with that in formulating the budget. But as that moves forward, there's many other issues that are still on the table that we want to continue to discuss from a Regent perspective from our committee. And so we want to continue with this stakeholder group. It is our intent that in the future, and we're probably looking at the meeting in September as a goal in Butte, to have another stakeholders meeting. So perhaps the day before the Board of Regents meeting, gathering together, again, taking what we've learned from this report and from other discussions that have happened in between these meetings, and really starting to formulate some of those priorities. What was interesting is that this morning, and like all of the Regents meetings, we had a chance to meet with the staff representatives, and we had breakfast with them, and we really appreciated you all hosting us. And what I also liked, and I heard from the other Regents, was that you came with some priorities in mind already, some things that you feel are important for you. And we're finding that with the discussions that were held in Bozeman for the compensation focus group, there seems to be some similar themes. So I think it gives us a point to advance our discussions, and we welcome that feedback. I think there's a lot of areas, obviously compensation, and that's why we chose the term, the compensation focus group, is that certainly is a priority from the Regents' perspective, and we know it is from the administrators and from the faculty and staff themselves, but that it really is meant to be, this stakeholders meeting is meant to be a broad discussion, not just compensation, but other things as well. One of the priorities that came up this morning in the breakfast discussion was this next legislative session, and really trying to prepare ourselves for that, so that we have, between the Commissioner's Office, the Regents, the universities themselves, faculty and staff representatives, student representatives, that we have one voice when we go to the legislature. And even prior to that, as the elections unfold here, that we have those priorities in place and that we can all speak to them in a similar voice. So I think that's one of the things that we're finding that has come out of these discussions with the compensation focus group. So I'm sure it's something that will continue to move forward in the meetings to come. So I don't know if there was any questions by the other board members here at all about this, or any recommendations as this moves forward.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments?
Madam Chairman, members of the Regents, Mark O'Farrell from MEMFT. And in terms of this focus group, and I just want to compliment the board and thank Regent Robinson for spearheading this effort. It really was a good discussion, and the campus leadership that was there, the presidents, it was all a very open and honest discussion about an important issue. I think what you're about to hear from our colleagues here at the faculty at Northern is sort of an extension of that. And as we go from campus to have these meetings, I think it's a good opportunity for our members to bring you the campus perspective on these issues. And so as we could discuss this today, I think, and as you move around in future meetings, I like the idea that you said, Regent Robinson, that we continue this discussion. And I think that, because each campus is somewhat different, as you know, and there are different needs, and they all have their own, areas that they have to work on. So this will be a good discussion. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might, as Mr. Farrell had mentioned, the next phase of our committee meeting, what I'd like to do is encourage, we have some representatives from local faculty leadership here that would like to hear from. We also have some union representatives that would like to speak as well. But what I'd like to do is start with the local leadership first, because what our intent is with the committee is to continue, and this focus group, is to continue to have the broader discussions with the stakeholders. And those are the meetings that I was talking about in Bozeman and also in Butte. But as we move to each campus is give some opportunity to have that type of feedback from the local campuses as well. So we did it in Dillon kind of by accident, because we don't always get to talk to the staff and the faculty in separate meetings on each campus. But what we're going to strive to is at least give an opportunity for that leadership. So here today we have some representatives that would like to speak to the board. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Snyder. I teach English here at Montana State University Northern. I've been teaching here for the past 23 years. And as I'm sure many of you know, Havre is a wonderful community. The faculty union here has long been committed to student success. And we're here today to say that we're also committed to working with Chancellor Limbaugh and the other administrators here to deal with what is a crisis on our campus, which is the crisis of low faculty salaries. And we've prepared 4 handouts which we'll give out to the board here. The first is a salary comparison from the NEA Higher Education group, which compares salaries all around the country. If you turn to page 27, you will find the comparison for Montana. And you will see there that Montana State University Northern is second to last in the entire nation, only ahead of a place called Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And that our salary is also lower on average than the Flathead Valley Community College, Western, Billings, and Tech. The second thing that I'm passing out is a salary comparison of the peer institutions. As you know, every university in the state has a group of peer institutions which they use as a comparison to compare the salaries and other expenditures. And you will notice in this comparison that Northern is also at the bottom of that list, some $8,000 on average behind other campuses. And this represents a crisis for our campus because we find it difficult to recruit and retain qualified faculty. It makes it difficult for us to find faculty in the nursing program, the diesel program, and other programs. And this has a negative impact on the academic courses and the curriculum, the programs we're trying to deliver to our students. And what we're here today to ask of the Board of Regents is that in the upcoming budget that you're in the process of preparing now, that there will be some kind of a plan which will address the crisis of low salaries, not just for all faculty in the state, but specifically for Northern, which finds itself in a unique position where our salary is so far behind that it really, in our judgments, threatens the academic integrity of the university and our ability to do the job that we're doing. The next thing I'd like to pass out is this is a comparison of the contract faculty part of the operating budgets that the Board of Regents compiles, and it lists the percentage of the budget which is spent on contract faculty. This compares Northern to Western and the Montana University system as a whole. So, for example, in 2012 at Montana State University, 27.63% of the contract faculty, the contract faculty represented 26.63% of the entire budget, whereas in the system as a whole, that figure is 29%. That difference of 1.3% doesn't seem like a lot, but in fact, every 1% for Northern represents about $150,000. So by Northern being below in that category of the percentage of the contract faculty as a percentage of the entire budget, we find ourselves falling behind. And so we're here to ask that the Board of Regents have some discussion and have some ideas about how we can address that. We certainly support your efforts and are appreciative of your efforts in going to the legislature to also address this question. But frankly, the legislature is not the only place in which this problem is going to be solved. The university system as a whole has to give serious thought to the priority of its expenditures. The trend over the last 40 years in the country is to decrease faculty, increase administrative and professional staff expenditures. That's also been the trend in Montana. It's also been the trend at Northern. And I think we have to return to a focus and a priority that puts teaching, learning, faculty, and students in the classroom. We need to put that first and make that a higher percentage of the money that we commit when we make these important budget decisions. And the last thing I'm going to pass out is some data which has the age distribution of the faculty here at Northern. Northern has an aging faculty. I myself am going to turn 62 in a few days. I'm the youngest guy of 5 of us in English. So, and there are almost half of our faculty is 60 or over. This represents a challenge for us in many ways. One is, in addition to my general forgetfulness, but it also presents this challenge. When faculty retire, many of them will be retiring at a rate which will be difficult to replace incoming faculty, and so this presents further challenge to the university. But once again, we're committed to working with the administration here and with the regents. But we think there has to be a plan, and which has to be something in addition to what the legislature may or may not do in the coming years. And I think we need to sit down together and see how we can come to common ground on this. Curtis Smaby, who's a professor of education here, might have something to add to my comments.
I was just last night on campus late and looking at our advertisements with 8 full-time tenure-track faculty positions being advertised. And it's May 24th. This is for the fall. It becomes very difficult and challenging to hire the kind of people that we like at the doctorate level, PhD level, to come to Northern to do that. And when we do, there's continuous challenges that the chancellor and human resources have to do we can't offer. That's a serious crisis for student success, etc. We need to take that into consideration. We're frustrated. I know Cuff is frustrated also, as how do we make this happen? It's just got to change. We cannot continue to be at the lowest of the nation, and we know the legislature and the state has $500 million in its budget. Something's amok. We need to work together to make that happen. And we're here to say that Northern is a bit of a unique situation, meaning at the bottom, that's not a good place to be. It creates all kinds of challenges. We know the system as a whole is underfunded. The institutions. When I look at data nationwide, Northern, 14 or $15 million is about half of what it takes to run an institution in every other state in this nation. That becomes problematic. We need to take this serious. We must do something together, and I encourage us to work together on continuous councils, but we got to take the money from somewhere. We must be more than construction sites. We must be focusing on faculty and students. Thank you.
Excuse me, Curtis, if you don't mind, for the record, if you could give your full name and,
sure.
And your
Curtis Smeeby.
position. And also, Madam Chair, we also have Mr. Farrow, who would like to present to us today.
Well, again, thank you very much for the opportunity. Again, Marco Farrow with MEMFT, and I think you've heard here some this campus specific information. But as all of you know, especially CEOs and board members, that it's campus, it's system wide, and that's where this initiative comes in, and that the work that we're doing here. I think that we have to work together, and I think the legislature is a part of this, but also your actions in terms of the budgeting process would mean a lot to our members if they can see action. I've mentioned in the last meeting that as you create your budget, some sort of a bright line item that speaks to this initiative that you have of recruitment and retention of faculty, that we can point to our members and say, this is the Regents' commitment. in their budget. This is the question you ask of a candidate when they come to your door. This is what you say to a legislator once they're elected. Do you support this budget? Because the Regents have seen this as a critical initiative, a critical need. I think it was in Flathead when we had our meeting up there a while ago. To a person, each CEO articulated this, and the idea of the searches that we're doing and the cost of failed searches. I've asked you before we should be tracking that number. I mean, these are all significant issues, and this aging faculty. I think it's a train heading in our direction. At this meeting every year or thereabouts, I also present some of the same material, and it's the opportunity that I will take to give you we track the current unrestricted. The current unrestricted budget growth and that allocation of contract faculty, and we've been tracking that back since 1998-99, and you'll see. I used to just give you this verbally, but I have a new administrative assistant, and she makes charts. So I have a chart. And you'll see the growth, and you'll see here the corresponding growth in the contract faculty line. And you'll notice a flat blue line. And you'll notice a fairly accelerated red line. And then the percentages that you see are those percentages over time that the contract faculty represented in the current unrestricted budget. And as I looked at this, I thought to myself, look, there's a ratio here. And I know Commissioner Christian has talked about a goal of 70% instructional and so forth, and I think that's a great goal to have, that you're looking at 77% of your budget going to instructional. But this is the next metric, I think, that drills down a little farther, that speaks exactly to recruitment and retention. If you look at that ratio back in 1998 of 37%, and I asked myself the question, what would have happened if we would have just kept the ratio the same? What would the conversation be now? Would we be talking about 50-51 in the nation? So, I mean, I think this is a metric we need to look at in light of this discussion of recruitment and retention. And I think a combination of a couple actions on your part, some recognition that this metric is important, some recognition that ratio is important. Now, realizing times have changed, and there's more needs. There's different needs on campuses now than there were in 1998 that may have affected this ratio. But I think we need to take a look at that. And on top of that, some commitment in your budgeting process that we can look at in that budget and say, there's the Regents' commitment to recruitment and retention of faculty. That would be very, very helpful. And I think it would go a long ways to at least starting the train down the right track here of turning this around before it's a disaster. I have this information campus-wide by each unit. I'd be happy to share that with you, but I think this comes right out of your data. You're used to me saying this and reporting it. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow. Commissioner?
Thank you. Excellent information from all of you. I appreciate that. I would just comment on this percentage notion and the last chart. This is a conversation we've been having too at the Commissioner's office. I've talked to Tyler and Kevin some about digging into this deeper. The 70% it has been a good number. But I think we do need to drill down further to really get to the heart of faculty question and what is actually going into serving students in the classroom from that perspective. And I think that's important. I also think I have a very strong commitment to the fact that I think the presidents and the chancellors need to manage their own budgets and their own campus. And I think there's this, certainly realized it in the last few months, sort of this tension, which is a necessary one, between the commissioner's office and campuses as we try to, sort of quasi-micromanage individual hiring decisions and individual recruitment efforts. And I think in the long run, we need to, as a board, and that's why I bring this up, I would like to try to provide to you all as board members some percentage ratio type numbers that you can look at and say, yeah, that is an acceptable ratio. And let's set those goals for campuses, and then let's get out of the way and let campuses be responsible for their budget. I think that is the right approach for us as a board and as a system. So we're going to work toward that end to try to drill down a little deeper and see if we can't come up with what are acceptable ratios and acceptable patterns, and certainly working with our partners at the table to see where we all kind of agree that those items converge, and then try to step back a bit and let those things happen, because I think that is the healthy thing. Obviously, that last chart shows an incredible retention problem. That's certainly one we need to show to the legislature. We keep trying to explain our retention and recruitment problems. That one points out where we're headed. I was at the Wichita conference earlier in the week, and there was a lady there from the Legislative Coalition, which helps compile information all over the country, but they did have some interesting statistics from the West. And through this year, within the next 2 years, so a 3-year period starting this year moving forward, all of the states in the West have or anticipate, and about half of them already have had the largest tax collections ever when you just look at total dollars. So we talk about recessions and we talk about all the things going wrong, but the truth is all of the states in the West are either have collected or will collect the highest total dollar volume of revenue that they ever have. And somehow that sort of gets lost in the message as we talk about the resources and all the challenges we have. And I realize the list of people wanting those resources has grown fairly exponentially as well. But nonetheless, it's our job to be in there working hard for the Montana University system to try to get our portion of those resources so we can address things. But I think it's an important statistic that we have in our mindset, so we're not overly apologetic when we ask for what we need to ask for in order to properly fund, ultimately recruit and retain the high-class faculty that have made this system what it is. We are truly blessed. As I wander this state, it's just more evident every step of the way. We are incredibly blessed with talented faculty, well beyond what we've offered in terms of salaries over the years when we compare them to our neighbors. But nonetheless, we've had good fortune there. I just think it's a mistake for us to push that good fortune too far. And so very productive conversation, and we will work toward bringing some of those ratios forward to you all so you can take a look at what is being spent and what we think would be worthy recommendations going forward for the board to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Are there any other comments? Yes.
Regent Robinson, Marco and his colleagues at MEA, MFT, and a lot of the faculty leadership across the system and I have discussed over the years. One goal that I've encouraged for quite some time that we have not yet achieved, because we do look at so much survey and relative data comparing average salaries in Montana to external peers. As you know, we do find as we go throughout the system from campus to campus that because there are such dedicated faculty on each campus who are highly intelligent folks who can put together very compelling points and presentations, that in the collective bargaining process, every campus we visit, the faculty leadership puts together a very compelling case and argument as to why the faculty salaries on that particular campus are the lowest or the most urgent problem in the system. And I think that that kind of data sometimes causes us to get tripped up a little bit. And we have for quite a while invited the faculty statewide that if we could come up with a model that is a consensus survey, and I think from our perspective it could even be faculty driven and faculty built and designed, and I think we could use it. If it were a system-wide survey that shows the targets, that we could then measure existing current Montana salaries institution by institution against those targets, that would by definition highlight for us where the most urgent problems are in terms of compa ratios, those market comparisons. Then we would have a tool that would identify in sort of a triage fashion where the most urgent faculty salary problems actually are. It would be a consensus tool. And as a system, we could then plan to devote resources towards those priorities in order of urgency. Even it would allow maybe some prospective planning, for instance, Montana State University and all of the educational units of Montana State University could have that kind of data. It would be consensus data, and we could look at it in budget planning and allocation distribution and so forth in the allocation plan. So I guess what I'm alluding to is I've seen and been presented with compelling data that would assert that the lowest faculty salary in the system in relation to comparable institutions nationwide is the full professor rank in Missoula at about 69% of the national average as a rank as a whole. And then depending on the academic discipline, maybe some of them are down as low as 55% of the national average. If we could get a consensus model with our faculty statewide that would show us that survey that would then guide us where the resources should go when the resources become available, that would be, I think, a worthwhile exercise. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Regent Krause.
Major Robinson, thanks. If I could at some point, thanks for saying that. Sometimes the commissioner staff, I think, is filling in for the Board of Regents. I appreciate you saying that. Probably should have been one of us a little bit. One of the, so I hear what you're saying. We're all about educating the students. The last two things we heard, of course, were the Smart Building Initiative, and also we dealt with the sexual violence and dealing with that, and neither one of those helped this ratio. You understand? Those are both spending money on those pieces of our institution will change the red line, not the blue line. And so one of my requests from the staff is, I need to know, can you break down the 416 with me? Not today, but can you just send me that at some point in time so I know what we're dealing with and the sources and uses of that funds? But I recognize that in this time period that I've seen here, 1998, 99 to 2010 and 11, the changes in our institution is, and I believe, Marco, you, if I can say that, both from Bozeman, so I think you can call me Jeff too. Because I couldn't remember your last name off the top of my head. Mr. Farrow, I think, I want to see where that's broken down. Simply because I know that we're doing so many things on the campus that we didn't used to do. And I'm not sure this is out of this is not some kind of effort to change the faculty importance or anything else, but it just is a natural growth in what people expect of us as institutions. And so I'd like to take a look at that if I could from the staff. And then one of the other comparisons that I always think about when I hear the comparison to national is, the sort of the on-the-ground comparison in the local non-university conditions. And so I'm always interested in knowing what we on the other side as taxpayers, what is our source? So if we're 49th in the nation in paying our professors, are we 49th in the nation and paying everybody else? Our grocery clerks and the person that the bank teller and the person that's all the other ones, and I suspect that our conditions across Montana are very similar to that. And so part of our issue, frankly, is the economic health of the state, not so much our comparison in betwixt ourselves, but our comparison overall and what we do about that. So some of these things, I feel like they're under my control. And some of them, when I hear let's go to the legislature, I think, yeah, let's go to the legislature and let's get some economic vitality in this state. So just wanted to put that out. I think many people are in this same 49% category, not just university professors.
Could I interrupt and make a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
One of the things that I failed to mention is that the other group on our campus which has been equally adversely affected with this whole shift of the university resources has been the classified staff. On our campus over the last 10 years, the administrative and professional staff has grown by some 30%, and at a time when the student enrollment has declined, but the classified staff has also declined, and the classified staff is also one of those groups that you mentioned who is poorly paid, does a great job, and has been asked to do more and more things. And absolutely, we support the classified staff, and it's the classified staff and the faculty that have the immediate one-on-one contact with the students, which is crucial to the success of the university. And yes, there's these other economic conditions around the state. There's other factors, this and that. The university does lots of things, but there has to be some discussion about priority. And a university is about faculty. Faculty generates the revenue, the students, faculty-student interaction is the number one job on campus. And if we lose sight of that, I think we'll be losing what is the central mission of the universities here in Montana.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Commissioner Christian?
Chairman Robinson, thank you. A couple comments to those questions. We will get you some more information on that. I think that is very helpful to look at. I had a very similar question on that percentage of Montana a month ago when we were looking at some hiring offer letters. And a lot of the faculty, staff, and even admin at the university system range in fact, we sort of push to get to around a 70% of the national average level. This is anecdotal, but nonetheless, we have looked at some comparisons. When you compare that to a regular hourly wage earner average in Montana, a lot of the Montanan jobs come in around 85%. So we are slightly lower when you start to compare jobs to jobs. We did compare the job of our chairman as a high school teacher, and that too is around about 85% of national averages. So I think we are below sort of the bell curve when you compare Montana University to as a percentage of income to other professions within the state. That said, yes, both our university system as a ranking and a lot of Montana overall income as a ranking are very low as you compare state to state. But we will try to get some more information on that because I think it's very helpful, and I think it's a compelling argument as we talk about these issues around the state. And the other thing that you mentioned is absolutely true, which is our overall budgets have grown. Reporting requirements. We had a large discussion this morning about Title IX. Title IX, a lot of that stuff didn't even exist 10, 20 years ago. And so that's an important piece and something Marco and I have talked a lot about. We're in agreement on that. Today's number, if we do come up with a ratio or percentage, is probably not going to be what it was historically because just the requirements, the reporting requirements, the departments, the financial aid, all of the pieces within the university system have grown and become very complicated, and that certainly has eroded those budget numbers as you look at them to an overall percentage of the campus. So that will be a piece of it, but still trying to stabilize that percentage in terms of faculty salaries or even staff salaries as a percentage to our overall budgets, I think is a worthwhile goal. But we will definitely work to bring some more information along those lines back. I think you're absolutely on the right track there, Regent Krause.
Mr. Commissioner, there is another factor there as well, that even if the rank, let's say the average faculty salary is 70% of the national average and the average Montana wage is 70% of the national average. So definitely that has often been brought to our attention in the legislative process, for instance. One big difference, though, as Regents, you are a large Montana employer of 2,000 faculty, and every time you seek to hire a faculty member, you are in a national or an international competition for that. So the 70% statistic is more than just a statistic. Like it might be a statistic for a person who works in a Main Street shop in Montana, where it's not a national market, but it's a true material hiring impediment or retention challenge for 2,000 faculty and many of the about 1,000 contract professionals and administrative positions. So that's the other side of that story.
That's something we talked about at ELG at length. But when I'm in my previous role trying to hire somebody in Montana in the title business, I'm competing against other employers at 85% of the national average for people in Montana at 85%. And when we're trying to pay 70% of the average at the university, at least at the faculty level for certain, we're competing against the 100% number because we're looking at a national market. And that's a substantial challenge for us, especially as you look at Dr. Schneider's chart on the aging piece of our faculty. That's going to be an extreme challenge for us. It really is.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your comments. Yes, we also have a comment here from Regent Williams.
Thank you. I have an overall sense of concern about some of what I'm hearing following the faculty presentation. Seems to me that some of our responses have talked about metrics and rankings and new models. And while we collect all that data and change the way we think and act about faculty and staff salaries, while we're doing that, there are staff people, as we know, on food stamps. That's the reality. I suggest to you it's not the charts and graphs. I remember a paragraph I read out of a history book one time from Old England. It said, the government are great at raising statistics, multiplying them, dividing, subtracting, adding, and making wondrous charts and graphs, forgetting that the statistics were first gathered by the village watchman who put down whatever the hell he felt like putting down. I've become distrustful in my career as a legislator and a congressman and a teacher and an administrator. And by the way, Mr. Snyder, as a former administrator, I agree with your alarm about the number of new administrators going up and the number of full-time faculty going down. I think that's a problem. I think the situation here at Northern is a Montana disgrace and an embarrassment. And however we go about it, whatever metrics we use, we have to fix this. And we have to convince the legislature to join us in fixing this, not just at Northern, but as best the legislature can throughout this system. Finally, it seems to me that making the point that, well, things are tough in Montana, and so you and we can't have what we want. We can't find a way out. We can't gather the money. We can't do it. We're sorry, is to promote the race to the bottom. What we ought to have is an innovative, aggressive approach that says the people of this state can afford and do demand a good higher education faculty and administrators. And we recognize we have to pay them, and by God, we'll find a way to do it. That's what the people of this state need to resolve themselves to. And I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of the end of faculty having to come to a Board of Regents, cup in hand, hoping to get some of their colleagues that work with them on these beautiful campuses, including this most beautiful and unique campus of any college of its size in Montana. I hope that coming to us with this tin cup and saying, please, sir, may we have more, will end. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regent Williams. Marvin, did you have something to add?
Yeah, that was eloquent enough. I think I'll just say amen to that.
Regent Buchanan?
I want to tag on that a little bit. Thank you, Chairman Robinson. Regent Williams, I think you're right. And the statement in there that's, I think, most pressing is the innovativeness in which we decide to employ how we react to this. We're talking about current unrestricted funding, which is a compilation of state funding and tuition dollars. There's a correlation in that drop with enrollment on this campus. And I think for us to think that the only way to respond is to continue to ask for funding to do the same things we've been doing, that is attracting fewer and fewer students, is going to lead us into the same problem for the next board that's sitting at this table. And it's my sense, and I'm very encouraged about the optimism that I'm sensing from leadership on this campus, about the sense of esprit de corps and the morale that he's already helping uncover from what I can tell. And I could not agree with you more that the assets on this campus are beautiful. But you look at a similar situation in the other corner of the state that suffered a long decline in enrollment, pulled up their boots, changed the way they're doing things, and the trend is reversed. The answer is not only asking for more money to keep doing what we've been doing. The answer is to take this institution and force it to take some risks so that it becomes more relevant in this portfolio of institutions around the state that I feel is already too heavy on the backs of the taxpayers in the state. So I agree completely with you that this is not the way that we should be treating. We don't want to be anywhere on these ratios. But the only answer cannot be perceived as continuing to ask for more money. We need to find a way to do things differently. And I think that the risk that's been taken in other institutions around this state to fix these problems have paid off. And it would strongly challenge us to not only think of this in a way of asking for more funding to continue to do the same things. The innovativeness in our response to these challenges is required. And these trends are occurring around the country. It's not just here. The challenge is related to reinventing ourselves as public institutions of higher education. And I sense that there's an optimistic undertone on this campus that has perhaps not been felt for some time. And I think you've got to grab that and use it to propel the leaders, not only on this campus, but around the system, to take the risks that are going to help us change these trends that are not only associated with declining funding. Current unrestricted funding is a compilation of tuition and state money. Tuition has declined because enrollment has dropped. We need to address this in many different ways. And I would strongly encourage that this institution take the lead and take a risk. Find a way to become as relevant as I think this campus has been in the past and can be again. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. Are there any other comments from the board, Madam Chair?
I just would like to take an opportunity to thank you again for your great leadership and enabling the board to hear what is on the minds of the faculty and the staff across the system in so many venues. And I appreciate your creativity and your inventiveness in making this happen. And dialogue like this, I think, will result in a meaningful response that may look different than how we've ever responded before. So I thank you, Major Robinson, and each of you folks at the table for taking a lead in each of your respective ways.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, I would also like to ask if there are any other comments in the audience, whether it be from any of the administrators. Chancellor Story.
Thank you, Regent Robinson, members of the board. A comment from a commander in the trenches, if I might put it that way, and a specific example of the problem which we face at Montana Western, and I know other campuses do. We just searched in our business department for a person to teach accounting, which obviously is a critical course to our students in business and in other areas. I'll give you just generalization, but we made an offer to a person who has not a doctorate, but a master's degree and a CPA, working in a public school system in administration here in Montana. And we made an offer of an assistant professor, tenure track line position. We were about $40,000 per year short of what this person was already being paid. We had no chance.
Thank you, Chancellor Story. Are there any other individuals that like to make comments?
Thank you, Regent Robinson. My name is Jeff Renz. I'm the chair-elect of the Faculty Senate at the University of Montana and the incoming chair of MUSFAR. There's some information that's not reflected in the focus group report, and I think it's partly because there are no University of Montana faculty as members of the focus group. And I want to review this quickly. And this is current as of this year. The law school has 20 faculty. This year we had 2 failed searches. One was in our flagship environmental law program. The chemistry department has 1 organic chemistry professor. When I took organic chemistry in 1968, we had 1 organic chemistry professor. In 2006, we had 4 organic chemistry professors. We will gain 1 more in 2012. In the College of Technology, 6 positions have remained unfilled. 4 have been vacant since 2006. In the management department of the business school, 2 positions are unfilled. 1 has been vacant since 2009. There are 3 vacancies in the English department. 2 have been unfilled since 2009. Sociology has a vacancy dating to 2009. Biological sciences has a vacancy that dates to fall 2010. Communications has 3 vacancies, 2 date to 2009. Computer science has a vacancy dating to 2009. It appears that we will have a failed search for the Vice President of Research. It appears that we will have a failed search for the Director of the Mansfield Center. The vacancies that I've just described are largely the result of failed searches. We have talked to some of our candidates at the law school. They're astute. Even though we can sometimes offer them competitive entry salaries, they are smart enough to look and see what their long-term prospects are. And the long-term prospect is fairly simple. The day that you walk into the door of your office is the day that, in real dollar terms, your salary is highest, barring promotion increases. So I have to disagree with my colleagues from MSU Northern. Train's not bearing down upon us. Train's passing over us. And if we don't fix it, we will have to hire candidates who are far less qualified than those we've been seeking. If we're paying less than any other public institution in the United States and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, it means that we will have to hire the candidates that all of those institutions have declined. And that means a substantial reduction in the quality of college and university education in Montana. And I don't want to see that, and I don't think anybody in this room wants to see that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. First of all, I wanted to go to Regent Tuss here.
Mr. Farrow, I got a question for you. This is a great dialogue and a conversation that I don't think is lost on this board, as you can tell. How deeply are you engaging your membership statewide in this conversation as they talk to the people who want to serve as the appropriators come January in Helena? That will make a difference. We've talked about that a lot. And I'm curious about how you're engaging your membership that could make a difference in this issue.
Thank you for the question. I think that it's become the #1 issue in our office. Our board of directors and our representative assembly, which represents not only our faculty unions but also all of our unions statewide, have declared essentially a state of emergency, and that the #1 priority is this election and what we're doing to make sure that people that are prospective candidates understand these issues and are willing to support us in these endeavors. And so I personally, I'm part of a team that's in the Kalispell, Missoula, Billings. I put a lot of miles on talking to our members to engage them about what happens at the legislative level. And so it's a big deal. And, the last session in particular, we stood hand in hand. Commissioner Christian was then chair of the Regents, and the presidents were there, and Commissioner Stearns was there, and we did everything we could to get appropriations. As you know, there was $10 million in the governor's budget that was essentially designed to address some of these issues. And we worked hard, and it didn't happen. So the answer to your question is it's our number one priority. We see this as an all-in time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. We have time for one more comment, and then we need to continue with the. We'll take two more comments. We have
Thank
one
you,
over
Regent.
here.
Regent Robinson, Chancellor's story illustrated a major complexity within the system, but didn't quite tell the rest of the statistic. It's no surprise that Western was $40,000 short in being able to land that business faculty member. The reason is, in Missoula or Bozeman, you hire a new business faculty member at about twice the salary of a new English faculty member. At Western and Northern, you hire the business faculty member at essentially the same entry salary level as the English professor. There is a culture at Northern and Western, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just the culture, where an assistant professor is an assistant professor, regardless of the discipline and the market competitiveness who you're competing with to land professors across different disciplines. That has been a challenge in collective bargaining at Western. The Regents bargaining team has proposed to allow Western to offer a substantially higher salary to business faculty. But Marco and my friend Tom would tell you that that has not been palatable in that culture on those smaller campuses. So that is another issue that I think will have to be addressed someday, actually recognizing that different academic disciplines have different market competitiveness factors. Because if we essentially hold all salary levels to the discipline that correlates to the least market competitiveness, that is self-imposed salary stagnation.
Thank you, Mr. McCrae. We have one last comment here from Ms. Gursky.
For the opportunity, members of the board. Thank you for your diligence, members of the committee. I would like to briefly remind the members of the board last year when students obviously didn't agree, but agreed to a tuition increase and said that staff and faculty retention and support and compensation was our number one priority then with the allocation of the increased tuition. And it remains to be our number one legislative agenda as MAS. Tuition is not our number one legislative, but faculty and staff retention and compensation is our number one agenda item as students. We know that 60% of us will need a quality, legitimate degree to get a job in the state of Montana, and that doesn't even include the some of us that are going to go out of state and compete with other institutions. The quality of our education is our number one priority, and I think that that's something that we need to be reminded of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gursky. President Cruzado, you had something to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with the expression about the need for us to find solutions to our faculty and staff compensation. But in thinking about the message that we're going to take to the legislature, I also agree with Regent Buchanan's point of view. We need to take a message that transcends the statistics and just the situation of these individuals and appeal to something in which our legislators can see a promise of a better future. I think that we have some low-hanging fruits in Montana. College Now has revealed that we have a long way to go in terms of enhancing participation in our community colleges and two-year programs. That is something that we can do immediately. Lumina Foundation has challenged the nation to increase the number of diplomas, certificates that the U.S. has been given out and increase that from 39.4% to 60% by 2025. Montana can be a leader. There are so many great students out there who, for whatever reason, have stopped. Life happens. Some of them are missing just 3 credits, 6 credits, 9 credits, 18 credits. Can we reach out to them? Can we call them? Can we say, please come back? What can we do? Is it a financial aid issue? Is it a family-related issue? We have now distance education opportunities available in each of our campuses. We need to go with a persuasive message to our legislators and let them know that if they help us with this, here are some tangible benefits that we can immediately work on.
Thank you, President Cruzado. We will have 5 more comments. No, I'm just saying that because we have a few things on our agenda, but please, Regent Teal, yes.
Yeah, just quickly, I think that I completely agree with you, President Cruzado, that we need to find ways to communicate this in an innovative way. Because I know personally, just anecdotally, from students I know on our campus, it has a real impact on the quality of education. I have a friend who's double majoring. One of his majors is in economics, who has participated in undergraduate research and had a great experience. He's had 3 research advisors. 2 have, in the course of his education, transferred to other universities, which gives you an idea of the impact of faculty retention on the student experience. So I absolutely agree. We need to find ways that aren't just what we've done in the past to try and address those issues, because it is an enormous train coming down the tracks, and it's something that's going to have a very real impact on the quality of education that we can provide. Thanks.
Thank you, Regent Teal. Well, as you can see, this has been an amazing discussion to have everyone's comments at the table, and it is exactly what we have been attempting to do through the compensation focus group, to really place a focus on this, because this is a priority to the Board of Regents in how we compensate faculty and staff. But what else is a priority is to have your active participation. So we thank the panel members that have been here to have this discussion. We look forward to meeting with you some more and continuing to put together an action plan that really addresses some of these needs. And I really appreciate the other board members that have commented, as well as the administrators here, because it's exactly what we were talking about, that we're taking the approach that it's not just up to us to find the money in order to make this work. But that is one thing that we need to focus on within our budget. And it is one thing that we need to address as we approach this next legislative session because of how Montana's system is set up. But I do appreciate all of the comments that we've heard about that partnership that needs to exist. And it's the only way that we, as a board, can understand what your position is as administrators, as faculty, and as staff. And I for one, want to say, it's been very helpful to have these discussions, both informally and formally, to hear what faculty and staff are willing to bring forward themselves, to say this is what would matter to us, that we are valued, and there's other ways, and not just compensation. I think it's important to keep all of those things on the table and to discuss them in their entirety. So that's the focus that we will have with our further discussion. So thank you again for joining us. Madam Chair, I'd like to move on to something that was kind of a bittersweet moment. I'd like to give Mr. Marvin, and I'm sorry, I always butcher your last name, Lansford, to address the board as well. He will be leaving from his position as chair of Faculty Senate, and so I would like to give him a few moments to speak, and then we'll be led by Regent Krause here in a partying song.
So it's not that bittersweet, I think, but I just wanted to say a couple things. I've been coming to Regents meetings for 4 years now in my participation as chair-elect and then chair of Faculty Senate at MSU and then as chair of MUSFAR, the Faculty Academic Senate this year, which has had me sitting at the table with you. And I just wanted to say a couple words of thanks and just a couple quick observations. And I was going to introduce Jeff Rentz, who will be sitting here next year, and he's just introduced himself eloquently as well. So he'll be a more than adequate replacement for me, you'll see. When Mary Moe, she got to sing when she left sort of your parts here. So I was wondering if I could get to do what I do. And that's your cue to say, what is it you do? But I'm often sitting at these meetings thinking a number of things, and one of them that I think is, you know what, this would be a great time to hear a little bit of poetry. And I don't think it's ever really happened at a board meeting that I can even remember. So what I'd like to do is just give you a little dose of William Blake, who's an 18th century poet that I like to read and think about. And this is not a happy, beautiful poem, but and just a quick, I'll be pretty fast here, but he's speaking of devils in this little part. The devils are the good guys, so think of them as you. The people who support higher education, let's think about it that way. And the angels in this are the bad guys. So maybe people who don't, or Philistines or something. This is from his Marriage of Heaven and Hell, it's called, and it's just a piece of it inside a fairly long poem. But as I was walking among the fires of hell, delighting in the enjoyments of genius, which to angels look like torment and insanity, I collected some of their proverbs, thinking that as the sayings used in a nation mark its character, so the proverbs of hell show the nature of infernal wisdom better than any description of buildings or garments. As I came home on the abyss of the five senses, where a steep, flat-sided steep hangs over the abyss, I saw a mighty devil, folded in black clouds, hovering over the cliffs. With corroding fires, he wrote the following sentence, now perceived by the minds of men on earth. How do you know, but every bird that cuts the airy way is an immense world of delight closed by your senses five. The proverbs of hell. In seed time, learn. In harvest, teach. In winter, enjoy. Drive your cart and your plow over the bones of the dead. The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. Prudence is a rich, ugly old maid courted by incapacity. What is now thought was once only imagined. It goes on a lot longer than that, but I won't. I would just like to say thank you to you for a couple things. For I think everybody that participates at this level in these meetings gets an insight into things that are extremely useful to see that the amount of dedication and commitment and work, in your case, you're not paid for it, to something that we all love. And that is higher education in Montana. And one reason William Blake's poem comes to mind for me, that's a poem about, ultimately, the celebration of imagination and a critique of self-righteousness in certain ways, and a celebration of education. And this is by someone writing in the 18th century. And I think a number of the values that he's celebrating in that continue to be reflected in the work that's done here. And I just wanted to say three things to say thank you for. I mean, and one is that I think in the work you show that you understand that we're all in the business not just of training people, but of transformation. And we all have lots of stories about that. I'll resist telling one. I just said, I've got a student in my class right now that just told me one about how being in higher ed has transformed her life from what she thought it was going to be. Another thing I'd like to thank you for, I think, is understanding that we are in the imagination business. And that includes all kinds of things, including the research enterprise. As we hear, I mean, as Richard Riley said about sort of what it is that we do, and it's a quote that I think about a lot, that as faculty, what we're doing is preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. I mean, and you can't deliver that type of education if the only thing you think you're doing is training for specific jobs right now that you see in front of you and outcomes. And I think people here have a vision of that. I get to go to the award ceremony every once in a while when E.O. Wilson from Harvard comes to campus, and the Stibbets Awards, and it's, they bring these people who've changed the world with their minds. And one of them is a technology award, people who've invented things that have changed the world. And past winners, you have, everybody here has in their pocket a cell phone, which works because of Klein Gilhousen, who lives in Bozeman, who invented the digital cell phone. So, you've all got a little piece of his imagination in your pocket. And you get those people together and you hear what they talk about, and it continues to blow my mind too. What they talk about is the importance not of technology, not of training, but at all their different levels of institutions from 2-year on up. Imagination and the value of primary research. Research that's not necessarily leading to any end, because it's those kinds of things that lead to the new things that affect all of our lives. And so I thank you for sort of participating in that. And the last thing to thank you for really is understanding that this is for everyone business that we're involved in. It's not an elite activity. We know we work for a system where accessibility is one of the highest priorities, and we need to continue to keep making that true for Montanans so that access to imagination and transformation is happening at every level for everybody that we can get in the door. And what that means is to make that happen, that this is for everyone business, that includes the governance aspects. It's too complex of a system for you only, as you well know, as you've already said today, to run it. You need us, you need them, you need everybody here sort of pulling together in the same directions to make this complex activity work. So thanks so much for the privilege of being allowed to participate in this.
Thank you, Marvin Lansford. We thank you for not just your service and your leadership, but your dedication to the students as well. So we appreciate your work. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, we have our last item, which is actually a number of items, our consent agenda. With your permission, I'd like to ask if there are any of the committee members or the board members that would like to remove any of the consent items from the consent agenda. Seeing none, Madam Chair, it's our wish to move these consent items forward for a vote tomorrow. Before we move on, I was curious on these particular items or any other items, if there's any other comments from the board first. Any other comments from our administration, from the campuses? Yes.
Regent Robinson, I'd just like to take one moment and talk about the two emeritus faculty from Montana Tech. Just the extraordinary Richard Berg, Dick Berg, 48 years, and Marv Miller, 45 years. So what is that? 93 years of service to the state of Montana and Montana Tech. So thank you for the opportunity to recognize those two outstanding servants.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the campuses? Any public comment at all? Yes.
You just heard from me, but I know on the emeritus list too. I mean, a colleague at Montana State. I don't know if he's watching the stream. I doubt it. But also Barry Jacobson, who is a longtime colleague and friend and absolutely deserving of every honor.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other comments, I'd like to adjourn this portion of the meeting and turn back the gavel to Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And with that, then we will recess for lunch. And just a couple of items on that. Regents, we have a picture that we need to pose for at 12:40. I believe it will be over here behind the black curtains. The Regents and the MAS students can in the dining room is what they're telling me for our picture. We can exit over here, the Regents and the MAS students over here, and go to the dining hall for lunch. All other participants, there will be lunch set up in the hallway for you. So you can go outside or bring your plates back here if you would like. See you all back here at 1.